The bank lobby buzzed with quiet activity as a well-dressed black woman stepped up to the counter. She smiled politely. "I just need to check my account balance." Before the teller could respond, the bank manager, Mr. Bradley, walked over, glanced at her simple purse, and burst into a mocking laugh. "Ma'am, we don't run balance checks for low-value accounts. Use the ATM outside." Customers turned. Some smirked, some whispered. The woman stayed calm, sliding her ID across the desk. 5 seconds later, the manager's face drained of color. Before we begin, subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from so we can bring more stories like these. The alarm on Naomi's phone went off at 5:30 a.m. sharp. A soft chime instead of anything loud or aggressive. She'd learned a long time ago, the day already came with enough noise on its own. No need to start it with violence. She lay there for a second, staring at the faint light leaking through the thin curtains, listening. The apartment was quiet. Good. That meant her sister was still sleeping. Naomi rolled over, tapped the alarm off, and sat up slowly, the old mattress springs creaking under her. She stretched her arms over her head till their shoulders popped, then swung her feet to the floor and slid them into worn but clean house slippers. Same routine. Same cheap slippers. Same small one-bedroom they'd turned into two. She didn't mind. This little space had seen worse days. Nights when the fridge held more air than food. Mornings when the electric bill notice sat on the counter like a threat. Those days, they weren't gone exactly. They were just behind her, sitting on a shelf in her memory, reminding her why she moved the way she did now. Naomi grabbed her bonnet off the pillow and slipped it off, gently shaking loose her braids. She padded into the tiny kitchen, flicked on the light, and squinted for a second as her eyes adjusted. The kitchen was neat, almost too neat. Every dish stacked, every surface wiped, everything in its place. A chipped mug sat upside down on a dish towel, waiting like it had a job interview. She filled the kettle and set it on the stove, then reached for the plastic container of oats. Her breakfasts were never fancy. Half cup of oats, slice of banana, splash of cinnamon if she was feeling wild. But they were hers, bought with money she'd earned, prepared in a kitchen she paid rent for. As the kettle started whispering its little pre-boil song, Naomi pulled a small, beat-up lunchbox from the cabinet. Baby blue, faded handle, zipper a little stubborn. She set it on the counter and lined up what was going in it. Turkey sandwich, apple sliced and sprinkled with lemon, a granola bar, leftover pasta in a small container. She packed like someone who'd gone hungry before and had no plans of ever going back. While she worked, her eyes flicked toward the doorway leading to the living room. A cheap curtain hung there instead of a door, drawn closed. Behind it, on the pull-out couch, her little sister was sleeping. Little was generous. Jada was 22 now, but in Naomi's head, she was still the girl with the too big backpack and tears on her cheeks after school, asking why kids talked about their daddy and she couldn't. Naomi checked the cheap wall clock. 5:45 a.m. She had time. She fixed her own bowl of oatmeal, poured hot water from the kettle, stirred until it was thick and comforting. She ate standing at the counter, scrolling the news on her phone with her free hand. Bank merger talks, housing prices, stock market updates. She read it all, absorbing more than anyone would guess from the outside. The world had no idea how many millionaires ate dollar brand oats in silent apartments. When she was done, she rinsed her bowl and set it on the rack, wiped the counter like she always did. Routine felt like armor sometimes. Finally, she walked to the living room doorway and gently pushed the curtain aside. Jada was curled on her side on the pull-out couch, arm thrown over her face, hair tied up in a bright scarf. The soft light from the street lamps outside painted a faint glow across her cheek. Naomi smiled. "Jay," she whispered. No response. "Jay." "Hey, it's almost 6. Jada groaned, shifting just enough to prove she heard. 5 more minutes, she mumbled. Naomi chuckled under her breath. "You said that yesterday and the day before. Your class is at 9. You said you wanted to get there early." At that, Jada peeled her arm away and peeked out with one eye, squinting. "You really gonna hold me to my own words this early in the morning?" "Always," Naomi said. "You want some oatmeal?" "No," Jada groaned. "I want sleep." Naomi shook her head, but there was nothing sharp in it. "I made turkey sandwiches. Yours is in the fridge. Eat before you leave, and drink water, not soda." Yeah, Jada muttered. Naomi stepped inside, leaned down, and kissed her sister's forehead, a quick, practiced movement that had never grown old. "I gotta go by the bank before work," she said quietly. "Text me when you're on campus, all right?" Naomi studied her for a second. She had dark circles under her eyes from studying late. A textbook lay open on the coffee table, half-highlighted notes scrawled in the margins. The sight made Naomi's chest warm. They were tired for a reason now. A good reason. "Love you, Trouble," she said. "Love you too," came the muffled reply. Naomi let the curtain fall back into place and headed for her room. Her closet was small, packed tight with clothes that matched how she lived. Simple, durable, clean. She chose a soft cream blouse and a dark gray skirt that fell below the knee. Nothing flashy, no logos, just neat. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar, smoothing the fabric over her hips. Her reflection looked back at her. Brown skin, gentle eyes, the faintest smile. Ordinary. That was how most people would describe her if they saw her on the bus. And that suited her just fine. She slid her feet into a pair of low black flats, picked up her worn brown purse, and pulled a slim folder from the top shelf of her closet. Inside were neatly arranged documents, ID, printed statements, a folded letter with a bank logo, and a small notepad with her own handwritten notes. She checked everything twice. Naomi didn't go to banks unprepared. You could have everything on your side, the law, the policy, the numbers, and still be treated like you were begging for favors. She'd learned that young, watching her mama get talked down to in offices by people who liked hearing themselves talk. Not today, she thought. Today was simple, routine. Just a small issue with her account she wanted cleared. She slid the folder into her purse and zipped it shut. At the door, she shrugged into a light jacket, grabbed her keys from the hook, and looked back once more at the little apartment. 2 mugs on the rack, 1 textbook on the table, 1 sister half asleep behind a curtain, all of it paid for, all of it hers. "All right," she murmured to herself. "Let's get this done." The bus stop was 3 blocks away. The morning air was cool, not fully committed to being cold yet. Naomi walked with steady steps, bag tucked close to her side, headphones in, but no music playing, just the cord hanging, an excuse not to make small talk if she didn't feel like it. Street vendors were setting up. A guy with a food cart arranged bagels in a metal tray. A woman swept the sidewalk in front of a corner store, pausing to nod when Naomi passed. "Morning," Naomi said, soft but clear. "Morning, baby," the woman replied. Naomi reached the bus stop and checked the route list, though she knew it by heart. She always took the same one, the 27 to downtown, then a short walk to the bank before heading across the street to her job at the community center. Other commuters gathered around the signpost, a man in a suit scrolling his phone, a teen with a backpack too heavy for his frame, an older woman clutching a shopping bag. The bus rolled up a few minutes later, brakes hissing, door folding open with a squeak. Naomi tapped her transit card, nodded to the driver, and moved toward the middle, grabbing a pole as the bus lurched forward. She claimed the seat by the window when one opened up, resting her purse on her lap. Through the glass, the city slid by. Corner stores, old brick buildings, a mural of a black girl with a crown of flowers and the words "You Matter" painted above her head. Naomi's lips curved at that. If she'd had that mural near her bus stop growing up, maybe some days would have hurt less. Her phone vibrated in her bag. She fished it out and saw a text from Jada. "Up, eating, you win." Naomi chuckled and typed back, "Good. Proud of you." She hesitated, then added a small heart emoji. Jada replied with 3 eye-roll emojis and a pink heart right after. Naomi tucked the phone away. The bus turned onto a busier street. Downtown rose ahead. Taller buildings, shinier glass, cleaner sidewalks. Different kind of world. Same city. She pressed her thumb against the edge of her folder inside her purse, just to feel it there. She wasn't nervous, exactly. Just alert. Banks made her feel that way. The marble floors, the cold air, the quiet condescension in certain smiles. Folks behind the counter who talked slower, louder, like English changed when it hit brown skin. But then she thought of the numbers in her account, the ones she'd earned with years of grinding, saving, saying no when she wanted to say yes. She thought of the nights she'd stayed up researching investments instead of watching TV. Of the first time she'd bought a tiny slice of a company she'd once only seen in commercials. Of the email calling her an angel investor when all she'd really done was believe in somebody else's dream, the way nobody had believed in hers. They didn't know who she was. That was fine. They would treat her like anybody else. That was the problem. The bus announced her stop with a ding and a robotic voice. Naomi stood, dipped her head in a little thank you to the driver as she got off, and stepped onto the clean downtown sidewalk. Ahead, the bank towered above the street. Glass doors, polished brass handles, logo gleaming in the morning light. She smoothed her blouse, took one more deep breath, and walked toward it. Just another routine morning, she told herself. Just another errand. She had no idea that by the time she walked back out those doors, the entire bank would know her name, and the way they looked at her would never be the same. The bank doors slid open with a soft hydraulic sigh, releasing a blast of chilled air that felt almost disrespectful compared to the warm morning outside. Naomi stepped inside, automatically straightening her posture, the way she always did in places like this, not out of pride, but out of defense. The marble floors gleamed under bright lights, polished so intensely they reflected the ceiling. The line stretched almost to the entrance. Businessmen tapping impatiently at their phones, older clients clutching paperwork, young professionals with coffee cups and earbuds in, everyone wrapped in their own little worlds. Naomi stepped into the back of the line quietly, purse held in front of her with both hands. She watched the tellers behind the counter move with rehearsed efficiency, except towards certain customers. You could always tell by the tone changes, the smiles that didn't reach the eyes, the clipped patience. She'd learned to see the patterns years ago. A teller at the third window looked up. Their eyes briefly scanned the line, landed on Naomi, skipped right past her like she was invisible, looked to the man behind her instead, and smiled warmly. Naomi swallowed. "It's fine. This is normal. Just get the paperwork printed and leave." A few minutes passed. The line moved slowly. Naomi shifted her weight, careful to keep her documents tucked neatly into her folder. double-checking that her ID was where it should be. A man in a navy suit walked through the doors, sunglasses still on, smelling like expensive cologne and entitlement. He glanced at the line, expression twisting with annoyance. "God," he muttered, "why is this place always packed?" Naomi stepped forward, giving him room. He didn't take it. He stepped directly in front of her instead. Naomi blinked. "Excuse me, the line?" He didn't even look at her. He turned to the woman in front and said, "I'm just dropping something off. Won't be long." The woman shrugged sympathetically at Naomi, but said nothing. No one corrected him. No staff member noticed or cared. Naomi exhaled slowly. She'd been here before, 1,000 times before, at counters, in meetings, in waiting rooms where she disappeared the second someone else walked in. She didn't fight it. Not today. The line crawled forward. A pair of bankers stood near the corner offices, whispering as they reviewed a tablet. Naomi heard one of them chuckle quietly. "These people come in with $5 accounts and think we're miracle workers." The other smirked. "Watch, she'll want a manager." Naomi didn't have to guess who she referred to. Their eyes flicked toward her for just a second. That split-second glance people gave when stereotyping was second nature. Naomi lowered her gaze to her hands. Her fingers tightened around her purse strap. She wasn't angry. She wasn't shocked. Just tired. A woman behind her huffed dramatically. "Oh my God, this line is ridiculous." Naomi offered a small, polite smile. The woman rolled her eyes. "I wasn't talking to you." Naomi's smile faded. It was always like this. Not outright hatred, not open insults, just subtle little knives. Quick enough to deny, sharp enough to pierce. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jada. "You make it to the bank yet?" Naomi typed back. "Yes, in line." Another buzz. "Treat yourself to coffee after. You deserve nice things too." Naomi's lips curled gently. She slipped her phone away as the line finally nudged forward another step. Only 3 people ahead now. She looked toward the teller stations again. One teller finished with a customer and glanced at the line. Her eyes moved past Naomi, skipped her, landed on the man behind her. The teller lifted her hand and motioned him over. The man walked forward, not even pretending not to see Naomi standing right there. Naomi opened her mouth, just slightly, then closed it. "You already know what happens when you complain," she reminded herself. A manager gets called. They smile, fake. They say, "It was a misunderstanding." And you walk out looking like the problem. She held her folder tighter. Breathe. Just breathe. A few minutes later, another window opened. A younger teller glanced up, briefly, then cleared her throat, as if irritated. "Next," she called loudly. Naomi stepped forward. The teller's eyes flicked upward, and her smile faltered. Not warmly, not kindly, just stiffened. "Hi," Naomi said, politely. "I just need a printed balance and—" "One moment," the teller cut in, pointing lazily toward the next available window. "You'll need to wait for a manager. These are priority accounts only." Naomi blinked. She hadn't even checked her ID yet. "Ma'am, I'm just asking for priority accounts only," the teller repeated, with that sugary fake tone reserved for children and customers they deemed problems. A few people in line exchanged looks, not sympathetic ones. One man whispered under his breath, "She probably doesn't know how to use online banking." Someone behind chuckled. Naomi felt heat rise in her chest. Not anger, but humiliation. And not because of the assumption, but because of how casual it always was. Small disrespect, tiny cuts, death by 1,000 microaggressions. But she stayed calm. She always stayed calm. She pressed her folder against her chest and stepped to the side, toward the manager's desk. As she waited, her mind flicked briefly to what she knew, the truth sitting quietly inside her accounts. The zeros waiting behind the glass. The investments she'd built from nothing. The financial empire no one suspected lived inside her thrift store purse. If they had any idea, Naomi inhaled slowly through her nose. Today, they would learn something. Today, someone else's assumptions would collapse, not hers, and she didn't need anger to make it happen, just patience. She lowered herself onto a waiting area chair, purse on her lap, posture straight, eyes on the floor. This wasn't new, but what came next would change everything. Naomi sat quietly in the waiting chair, posture straight, folder balanced on her knees. She could hear the hum of the printers, the rhythmic tapping of keyboards, the low murmur of customers chatting while they waited. Everything felt strangely loud and distant at the same time, like the world was moving, but not toward her. Across the lobby, a teller pointed in her direction and whispered something to another employee. They both snickered softly. Naomi kept her eyes low. She was used to this, the whispers, the glances, the assumptions. Her whole life had been filled with these tiny insults people didn't even think twice about giving. But today the cuts were piling up faster than usual. A shadow moved across her, heavy footsteps, a strong scent of cologne mixed with arrogance. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. She could feel his presence like a shift in the air. Mr. Bradley, the branch manager, tall, pale, mid-50s, always wearing a suit too expensive for the position he actually held. He carried himself like he owned the bank, and everyone in it. His voice came sharp and loud enough for the lobby to hear. "You," he barked. "Stand up." A few customers flinched at the tone. Naomi lifted her gaze slowly. "Yes, sir?" she asked gently. He didn't acknowledge her politeness. He didn't soften his expression. He just tightened his jaw like talking to her was already beneath him. "You cannot sit here," he said. "These chairs are for priority members waiting for extended services. You need to go back to the general line." Naomi blinked. She kept her voice calm. "I was told to wait for a manager. That's why I—" He cut her off with a dismissive wave of his hand. "I am the manager," he snapped. "And trust me, whatever you need, you do not require managerial assistance." People turned to look. Some smirked, some raised eyebrows, but no one spoke. Naomi felt the heat of embarrassment crawl up her neck. She shifted slightly, glancing down at her folder. "Sir," she said softly, "I just need to check my balance. That's all." Laughter rippled through two teenagers behind her. Someone muttered, "Probably 2 digits." Mr. Bradley sighed dramatically, as if she were personally wasting his time. "Listen," he said loudly, "this bank prides itself on serving customers efficiently. If you want to know your balance, use the ATM like everyone else." Naomi inhaled slowly. Her fingers pressed gently into the folder's edge. She spoke politely, the same politeness that had protected her for years. "I prefer to request it here, in person, and I brought my ID. I just need a printed balance." Mr. Bradley stepped forward suddenly, invading her space, grabbing the folder from her hands before she could react. Gasps echoed. Naomi's heart jumped. He flipped open her folder, scoffing as he glanced at her documents. "Your ID is fine," he said. "But honestly, I don't know why you people insist on—" He stopped. He caught himself. But the damage was done. Everyone heard it. Naomi felt her stomach twist, but she kept her face still. She had spent her whole life practicing stillness in moments like these. "I'd like my balance checked, please," she repeated. Her voice was calm, steady, almost too steady. Mr. Bradley rolled his eyes and marched toward the counter, waving her along aggressively. "Fine. Let's get this over with." Naomi followed, shoulders small, steps quiet, heartbreak held together by dignity. When they reached the teller counter, he turned back to the staff loudly. "Priority accounts only," he declared. "I'm checking a standard account manually." The room tensed. Everyone watched now. He swiped her ID dramatically, like he was performing on stage. "Let's see what you're carrying," he muttered. The teller next to him covered her mouth, smirking. Naomi gripped the edge of the counter. Breath controlled. Mr. Bradley typed her account number into the system with exaggerated impatience. Tap, tap, tap. He hit enter. The screen loaded, then froze. His eyes widened. Naomi watched his posture shift, shoulders dropping, back straightening, breath catching. His mouth opened slightly, then snapped shut. His face paled. His fingers trembled on the keyboard. He tapped the keys again. Once, twice, harder, as if hoping the screen would change. It didn't. The numbers stayed. The digits glowed at him like a slap to the face. Balance, $13,487,902. Multiple portfolios, private trust accounts, 4 business investments, 1 major partnership. The room fell silent. The teller who'd smirked earlier gasped loudly. A customer said, "Hold on, what?" Someone muttered, "What did I just see?" Mr. Bradley froze, completely paralyzed. Naomi didn't speak. She didn't gloat. She didn't even blink. She simply stood there, quiet as always, watching the man who tried to humiliate her fall apart under the weight of his own ignorance. Her humility had never been weakness. It had been armor. And now his prejudice cracked in front of everyone. He stuttered, voice barely audible. Miss, I didn't, I mean," the more he tried to speak, the worse it sounded. He looked up at her, terrified, confused, desperate. But she remained still, calm, unshaken. "Please," she said softly, "may I have my printed balance now?" Her politeness sliced cleaner than any revenge ever could. The teller scrambled to print it. Mr. Bradley stepped back, sweating, shaking his head in disbelief. He looked like a man watching his world collapse in slow motion. And this was only the beginning. The printer spat out the balance slip with a faint mechanical whir. The teller's hands shook as she grabbed it, smoothing the paper like it had suddenly become fragile. She handed it to Naomi with both hands, a respect she hadn't earned toward her earlier. Naomi accepted it gently, nodding once. "Thank you." Her voice was soft, but the silence around her made it echo. Mr. Bradley stood frozen beside the counter, his face drained of color, his hands still hovering stupidly above the keyboard, as if the numbers might disappear if he blinked long enough. But they stayed. 8 figures, multiple accounts, trusts, investments, enough wealth to buy the entire branch if she wanted to. Customers stared at Naomi with a mix of shock, guilt, and something else, something close to reverence. The woman they dismissed mere minutes ago now left them speechless. And she hadn't raised her voice once. Naomi stepped aside, slipping the printed balance into her purse with quiet precision. She adjusted her blouse, smoothed her skirt, and prepared to leave. But a voice stopped her. "Excuse me, ma'am?" She turned. A young man stood near the waiting chairs, clutching his phone in one hand. Early 30s, sharp, but humble appearance, clean cut, wearing a navy jacket. He looked like someone who solved problems for a living. Quiet, but observant. Ethan Ross. He approached her carefully, respectfully, unlike anyone else in the room. "I just wanted to check if you're all right," he said quietly. "I saw everything." Naomi blinked, surprised by the mildness in his tone. Most people came at her with pity or guilt. Not him. "Yes," she answered softly. "I'm fine. Thank you." But Ethan didn't look away. He hovered for a moment, then hesitated before lowering his voice. "I'm sorry if this is forward, but you knew, didn't you?" Her brow lifted slightly. "Knew what?" He swallowed, glancing toward the teller screen still glowing with traces of her information. "Your balance," he whispered. "You knew exactly what it was before you walked in here." Naomi didn't smile, but her silence said enough. Ethan nodded slowly, impressed. "I figured," he said. "Your calm wasn't the calm of someone hopeless or confused. It was the calm of someone who already knew what she carried." His words weren't flattery. They were recognition. Naomi exhaled softly. She rarely met people who saw her clearly on the first try. "And," he added, leaning just slightly closer, "I'm also guessing you're the anonymous investor Hale Enterprises has been trying to contact." Naomi froze. Her eyes widened by the smallest fraction of an inch. A reaction so subtle most would miss it. But not Ethan. He'd seen the emails pinned on the bulletin at his co-working space. He'd seen the investment proposal circles in the business community. He'd recognized the alias, N. Carter Holdings, a major investor known only by initials. He watched Naomi's surprised silence and nodded, confirming his guess. "I thought so," he murmured. "They've been desperate to meet you. Didn't expect you'd be standing in line like everybody else." Naomi's heart tightened in her chest. She wasn't angry, just tired. So tired of the world not understanding that simplicity wasn't weakness. "That's exactly why I stay anonymous," she whispered. Ethan looked at her with genuine respect, something she rarely saw from strangers. "You handled that better than most CEOs would have," he said. "Better than anyone I know, actually." Naomi shifted her weight, uncomfortable with praise. "I didn't do anything special." But Ethan shook his head. "You stayed poised while being dehumanized," he said. "That's not nothing." She looked away, swallowing back a lump she didn't realize had formed. Behind them, whispers grew louder. "She's rich?" "No, like really rich. How did we not know?" "That manager is done. She looks so normal." Normal. The word landed like a pebble ricocheting inside her chest. People only used normal when they couldn't understand how she didn't fit their expectations. Ethan turned at the sound of footsteps. 3 employees rushed toward the teller screens. "Shut it off! Hide it! Clear the page, now! Turn the monitor around!" Too late. Half the lobby had already seen more than they ever imagined. Mr. Bradley staggered forward, trying desperately to recover himself. Miss Carter," he stuttered. On behalf of the entire bank, His voice cracked like old paint peeling. Naomi fixed him with a calm, unreadable gaze. Ethan stepped slightly closer to her, like a silent shield. He wasn't interfering, just standing beside her in support. It was strange, she thought. Someone she had never met understood her better than the man paid to help customers. A small crowd formed, waiting, watching. The moment was suspended in the air, heavy, electric, expectant. Ethan leaned toward her once more. "Whatever happens next," he whispered, You're not alone in this room anymore. Naomi's breathing steadied. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. Not because of her money, not because of her account, but because someone actually recognized her strength before the world did. A ripple of change began to spread across the lobby. And the storm was only just beginning. For a full 3 seconds, the bank lobby hung in stunned, breathless silence. The kind of silence that arrives right before a storm breaks. Then, it all exploded. Whispers turned into gasps. Gasps into murmurs. Murmurs into a rising wave of disbelief washing through the room. 13 million? You're kidding. That woman? Her? No way she's the investor. How did none of us know? Naomi stood still in the center of it, her purse at her side, shoulders relaxed, face calm. She was the quietest person in the room, yet the one everyone gravitated toward now, pulled to her not by pity or disrespect, but by awe. Mr. Bradley stumbled backward, one hand clutching the counter as his knees threatened to buckle. Sweat dotted his forehead like tiny beads of guilt. I didn't, he gulped. I had no idea. Naomi didn't answer him. She didn't need to. The truth already had. Across the room, a teller frantically typed on her keyboard, reading data aloud under her breath. Multiple trust accounts, large corporate portfolios, confidential client status. Oh my God. Another teller whispered to her coworker. She's the investor the regional director mentioned. The one they were prepping for. A man in line shook his head in disbelief. Imagine treating someone like trash and then seeing 8 zeros pop up. Another woman muttered under her breath, cursed quietly, and looked like she suddenly wished she had defended Naomi earlier. People were shifting, adjusting their posture, wondering what they would say if she looked their way. She didn't. Naomi kept her eyes soft and downward, holding her balance slip with quiet dignity. Then, a sharp chime. Every teller screen blinked red at once. Alert! High-value client activity. Notify regional management immediately. The loudest gasp came from the assistant manager. Oh no, she whispered. Corporate saw it. Saw the account. Saw the interaction log. Saw everything. Within seconds, her headset crackled. Get the director, the voice commanded. Now. Employees scrambled like bees whose hive had been kicked. One slammed open the back office door. Another sprinted down the hallway. Someone else frantically straightened her tie, muttering, "He's not going to be happy. He's definitely not going to be happy." Naomi watched all this with the same gentle expression she'd carried when arriving, as if none of this noise could disturb her peace. Ethan stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes sharp. He wasn't stepping in, but he wasn't stepping away either. He was watching the bank unravel in real time. 30 seconds later, the glass door to the executive wing swung open with a force that made everyone jump. The regional director himself emerged. Tall, clean-shaven, crisp suit, polished shoes, a man who lived for order and reputation. His badge gleamed. Michael Davenport, regional director. His eyes swept the room like a laser tracking heat signatures. "Where is she?" he demanded. Mr. Bradley pointed with a trembling hand. The director's face changed immediately. Shock, recognition, embarrassment, urgency, all fighting for dominance in a split second. He marched straight toward Naomi, but instead of the arrogance or impatience she usually got, he stopped a respectful 3 feet away and bowed his head slightly. "Miss Carter," he said, voice controlled but trembling at the edges. "I apologize for the delay. Had we known you were coming, we would have prepared the private suite for you." A collective gasp rolled through the lobby. He knew her name. Not guessed, Not assumed, not mispronounced. He knew her. Naomi lifted her gaze briefly and offered a polite nod. "Good morning," she said softly. Her voice was calm, measured, grace under pressure. The director swallowed. "Miss Carter, it appears there has been a severe breach in protocol." His eyes drifted to Mr. Bradley, as if he were looking at a cracked vase in an antique store. "The branch manager," he continued, "is responsible for ensuring every client is treated with professionalism. You were not." Naomi's expression didn't change. "I only asked to check my balance," she said quietly. "Nothing more." "But you are entitled to much more," the director replied quickly. He inhaled deeply, squaring his shoulders. "Mr. Bradley," he said without looking at him, "step forward." Mr. Bradley stumbled toward them like a man walking to his own sentencing. "Explain your conduct," the director ordered. I... Words died on his tongue. His lips twitched. His eyes darted around for rescue. None came. Finally, a broken whisper escaped him. "I thought she was an ordinary customer." "And you treat ordinary customers with hostility?" the director snapped. A few customers muttered agreement. Bradley froze. The director continued, voice cold as January ice. "You denied her service, publicly humiliated her, and attempted to categorize her into a tier based on what exactly?" Silence. God, the silence was heavy. The truth had nowhere to hide. Naomi stood straight, breathing slow and steady. She wasn't here for revenge. She wasn't here to destroy anyone. She was just here for a printed slip. But life had a way of forcing truth into the light. Ethan stepped slightly closer, gaze locked on the director. "She wasn't loud," he said evenly. "She wasn't rude. She wasn't difficult. She was ignored, then dismissed, then embarrassed." Heads nodded throughout the room. Even the director looked moved, or at least shocked that someone stepped up. Naomi touched his arm gently, signaling she wanted to speak. He quieted immediately. She looked at Mr. Bradley, not harshly, not vengefully, but with the same soft dignity she'd carried since she entered. "I didn't want special treatment," she said. "I just wanted the same respect you give everyone else." Her voice was gentle, but it carried like thunder. Mr. Bradley's face collapsed in shame. The director exhaled and straightened his suit. "This branch," he announced loudly, "will undergo a full review starting today. Staff training, disciplinary action, and new client protocols will be implemented immediately." Gasps rippled again. "And Mr. Bradley," he added, turning to him with finality, "you are relieved of duty, effective immediately." The room froze. Bradley's jaw dropped. He looked between Naomi and the director in disbelief. I'm fired?" "Yes." The director said simply, "You are." Security approached from the hallway. Ethan glanced at Naomi. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. Not with triumph, but with quiet justice. The storm had arrived, and now everything would change. The private office was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Soft leather chairs. A polished wooden desk. Muted lighting meant to soothe high-value clients. But the tension in the room made every light feel too bright. Naomi sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, her posture straight, her face calm. She looked like a woman waiting for a bus, not like someone whose presence had just shaken an entire building. Across from her, the regional director, Michael Davenport, paced with stiff shoulders and clenched fists. He kept glancing at the glass wall, where employees peeked in nervously before scurrying away. He stopped pacing only long enough to ask, "Miss Carter, Are you all right? Did anyone else mistreat you? We will take full action." Naomi shook her head slightly. "I'm fine," she said quietly. "I didn't come here for a spectacle." Her voice was soft, but her words made the director flinch harder than a shout. He cleared his throat. "Still, I want to personally apologize on behalf of the bank, the branch, and our entire institution. What happened downstairs was unacceptable." Naomi didn't respond right away. She simply watched him, steady and unreadable. A knock interrupted them. Ethan stepped inside hesitantly. "I'm sorry. The security team told me I could enter," he said softly. "I just wanted to make sure she wasn't being cornered." Naomi blinked, touched, surprised. Most people didn't protect her. Most people didn't step in at all. The director forced a tight smile. "Mr. Ross, correct?" "Yes, thank you. Your recording and eyewitness account will be helpful for the report." "I didn't record it to cause drama," Ethan said calmly. "I recorded it because she was being treated unfairly." Naomi exhaled quietly, absorbing the truth of that. She wasn't alone this time. Not today. The director sat at his desk and folded his hands. "Ms. Carter, if you'd like, we can move you to our premier client services. You'll have a personal relationship manager, express access, private entrances." No, her interruption was soft but final. His brows pinched. "No? I asked for the same service as everyone else," she said, "and that's all I want." Ethan lowered his head, hiding a small smile. The director rubbed his forehead, embarrassed. "Yes, of course, of course." Another knock came, sharper, faster. A security supervisor entered with a tablet in hand. "Sir, we have an issue," he said, quietly. But Naomi still heard every word. Corporate HQ received Miss Carter's account flag. They want to know why an account of her level triggered a discrimination report. The director's eyes widened. "Already? That fast?" "Yes, sir. They're waiting for your statement." Naomi watched the director's face crumble. His career wasn't... Naomi looked down at her hands. She remembered the sighs behind her in line, the teller pretending she wasn't there, the smirk on Bradley's face, the whispers, the disrespect, the assumption. But she also remembered something else. Her sister's face when she handed her dinner. Her mother's voice saying, "Always stay gentle." Her own promise to never let bitterness guide her choices. When she lifted her head, her eyes were warm, not angry. "I don't want to destroy anyone," she said quietly. "I just want the bank to treat people with dignity, whether they have $10 or 10 million. The director inhaled slowly, the kind of breath a man takes when something hits him harder than shame. "I understand," he murmured. "But what happened today must be addressed." "Then teach them," Naomi replied gently. That calmness, that grace, hit everyone in the room harder than rage ever could. Even Ethan stood still, staring at her, like he'd never seen strength expressed so quietly before. The director nodded firmly. "I'll make sure of it. Personal training, mandatory sessions, policy changes, starting today." Naomi nodded once. "That's enough." Ethan stepped closer, leaning toward her. "You handled this better than anyone I've ever seen," he whispered. Her lips formed the smallest smile. "I'm used to moments like this," she said softly, "but they don't get to define me." The director cleared his throat again. "One last thing. We'd like to offer you an upgraded account interface, reduced fees, and direct access to our senior team." Naomi shook her head gently. "I don't need special privileges." He blinked. "But I need fairness," she said simply. "Not favors." The room fell into thick, Respectful silence. Ethan watched her, eyes filled with a quiet admiration he didn't bother hiding anymore. The director slowly stood, straightened his suit, and bowed his head in a respectful nod. "You have my word, Miss Carter. Things will change." Naomi nodded once, accepting it, not demanding more. She stood, gathered her balance slip, and turned toward the door. Her leave wasn't dramatic, not stormy, not triumphant. She walked out with quiet dignity, the kind of dignity that comes from someone who knows exactly who she is. Ethan walked beside her without speaking, matching her pace, offering silent support. Downstairs, the entire lobby fell silent as she appeared. No whispers, no smirks, no disrespect, only stunned recognition. The woman they tried to judge had just judged them without raising her voice. The moment Naomi stepped back into the main lobby, it was like the air had changed. Gone were the smirks, gone were the whispers, gone was the impatient tapping of feet behind her. Every pair of eyes followed her, not with judgment now, but with stunned silence. A few employees straightened their posture. Others lowered their heads, ashamed. Even customers stepped aside respectfully as she walked through the center of the room. The same room that treated her like an inconvenience just an hour earlier now seemed to hold its breath when she passed. Mr. Bradley stood near his desk, or rather, near what used to be his desk. His eyes were red, hands trembling. Two security officers stood a few steps away, waiting for the director's final word. He didn't look arrogant anymore. He didn't look powerful. He looked small. "Miss Carter," he began, voice cracking. I didn't know. I wouldn't have." Naomi paused, not out of anger, but because she believed in looking someone in the eye when they spoke to her. "You wouldn't have treated me that way?" she asked softly. Bradley swallowed hard. "No. I mean, I didn't know." "That I had money?" Her tone stayed gentle, painfully calm. "So if I didn't, I wouldn't deserve service?" Bradley blinked rapidly, humiliated. I'm sorry," he whispered. For the first time all day, it sounded real. Naomi nodded once. Slow, steady. "Treat the next person with respect," she said. "Not because they might be wealthy, but because they're human." Bradley's face crumpled. He didn't have words left, only remorse. The regional director stepped forward. "Mr. Bradley," he said firmly, "hand over your badge. You are relieved of duties pending full investigation." The lobby gasped. Bradley removed his badge with shaking fingers, placing it on the desk. Security escorted him quietly through a side hallway. No shouting, no resistance, only the weight of consequence chasing him out the door. Naomi didn't watch him leave. She didn't need to. Her dignity had already spoken. The director approached her again, walking respectfully, almost cautiously, as if he were approaching royalty. "Miss Carter," he said, "your account has been fully updated, all fees waived, and a senior banker will reach out to you directly for any future needs." Naomi shook her head gently. "Thank you," she said, "but I told you, I'm fine with ordinary service." The director nodded, realizing he couldn't change her mind. Then Ethan stepped forward from where he'd been quietly waiting nearby. He wasn't smiling out of politeness. He was smiling like someone who had just witnessed something genuinely life-changing. "You handled that with more grace than anyone I've ever met," he said softly. Naomi looked up at him, warmth flickering in her eyes. "I just wanted what I came for." "And you got it," he said, lifting the printed balance slip with a little grin. "Plus a bank revolution." She chuckled under her breath, the first real laugh she'd let out all morning. As they walked together toward the exit, The director called after her one last time. "Miss Carter, the bank is grateful for your understanding today. You've given us a wake-up call we won't forget." Naomi didn't turn back. She didn't need applause or gratitude. Her silence was enough. When she and Ethan stepped outside, the late morning sun washed over the sidewalk. The world looked exactly the same. Buses passing, people rushing, cars honking, yet everything felt different. Naomi inhaled deeply. The air felt lighter. "You know," Ethan said, hands in his pockets, "I actually came to the bank for a meeting about a new client. Tech consulting." "Oh?" she asked, with genuine interest. He shrugged. "Turns out I found something more important." She raised a brow. "And what's that?" "A reminder that character matters more than any account balance." Naomi smiled, a slow, warm curve of her lips that softened her entire face. "Most people don't think like that," she said. "Then most people aren't paying attention," he replied. They reached the edge of the sidewalk where her bus stop sat, the same one she had always used. She didn't care about appearances. She valued simplicity. Her life worked that way. She turned to Ethan. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" he asked. "For not assuming." Ethan met her eyes, sincerity shining through. "I grew up with people who were judged for everything, where they lived, what they wore, the jobs they had. I learned early, the louder someone judges, the less they usually know." Naomi nodded slowly. "Well, I guess we both learned something today," she said. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then extended a small business card. "If you ever need help with anything, tech-related or otherwise, call me." Naomi accepted it politely. The bus pulled up. She stepped inside, turning back for a second, the way someone does when acknowledging a moment worth remembering. Ethan lifted a hand in a gentle wave. She offered a tiny smile. Then the doors closed. As the bus rolled forward, Naomi sat in her usual seat, watching the city pass by. Not angry, not triumphant, just grounded. She didn't need wealth to prove her worth. She never had, but today, everyone else finally realized it. The bus hummed softly beneath her, rocking gently as it moved through the familiar streets. Naomi rested her head against the window, watching sunlight dance along the buildings. People walked in and out of corner stores. Kids rushed to catch the school bus. A couple argued playfully on the sidewalk. Life moved on. Unaware of the quiet storm that had unfolded inside a bank lobby just an hour earlier. She reached into her purse and pulled out the small printed balance slip, the same one she came for. The numbers stared back at her, bold and undeniable. Numbers most people would never believe belonged to a woman dressed in a simple blouse and worn sneakers. Naomi folded the slip carefully and tucked it away again. For years, she had lived quietly, choosing humility over attention, letting others assume whatever they wanted, letting people judge her clothing and her silence, while never knowing the depth of her success. And today, for a moment, she saw exactly how the world reacted when the truth cracked through their assumptions. A soft voice drifted through her mind, her mother's voice. "Baby, people look quick, but they don't look deep." She smiled faintly. Her mother had been right. People saw skin, they saw clothes, they saw quietness. They saw what they wanted to see. They didn't see the nights she stayed up studying, the years she worked 2 jobs, the sacrifices she made for her sister, the investments she researched until her eyes burned, the wealth she built in silence. They didn't see the strength behind her softness. But today Today, the truth had spoken for itself. The bus slowed at a red light, and Naomi watched a family cross the street. The mother held her child's hand tightly, guiding her through traffic. Naomi's chest warmed. She knew that feeling. Wanting to protect, to guide, to uplift. She carried that same instinct with her little sister. Maybe that was why moments like this mattered so much to her. Not because she wanted revenge. Her calm was powerful. Her silence was sharp. Her presence was enough. The bus pulled into her stop. Naomi stepped off and breathed in the warm afternoon air. Cars rushed by. Birds fluttered overhead. A breeze slipped through the trees lining the sidewalk. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder and began walking home. Her mind drifted back to Mr. Bradley. The way his smirk collapsed into panic. The way he stuttered through excuses. The way he finally apologized. She didn't hate him, but she was glad he faced consequences. She thought about Ethan, kind eyes, steady voice. A stranger who chose to stand beside her instead of looking away. People like him reminded her the world wasn't all cruel. Her thoughts quieted as she approached her building. A modest apartment complex she'd chosen specifically for its safe community, not its prestige. She didn't need luxury to feel whole. As she climbed the stairs, her inner voice finally found the words she'd been holding all day. People judge what they think they see. She unlocked her door and stepped inside, greeted by the comforting warmth of home. She set her bag down, exhaled deeply, and whispered to herself, "They don't look deeper. They don't imagine what you might be." She moved to the window, watching the sun dip lower. Then, with a soft, tired smile, she finished the thought, "But your worth, your true worth, doesn't live in their eyes." She touched the glass gently. "It lives in your character, especially when theirs fails." The room glowed with warm light as the sun finally settled. Naomi closed the curtains, feeling at peace. She had walked into a bank as an ordinary woman. She had walked out as a reminder. A reminder that humanity is measured by how you treat the people you think you can overlook. A reminder that dignity doesn't rise when tempers flare. It rises in silence. And as she prepared dinner for her sister, humming softly, she whispered one final truth to herself. Never let someone's small mind shrink your worth.